Have you ever noticed your dog trying to pull away when you pick them up? Or gently turning their face away when you hug them? In that moment, you probably thought, "Don't they love me?" But wait, because they weren't deciding whether they loved you. They were calculating whether they could survive. That sentence might sound exaggerated to you, but what we're talking about today isn't cute observations or pet blog advice. Research conducted by Dr. Rachel Casey and her team at the University of Bristol on canine welfare, along with findings from the Horowitz Dog Cognition Lab, tells us something very clear. Dogs develop a chronic stress response to certain behaviors of their owners, and that stress is, most of the time, completely silent. Today we're decoding those silent complaints for you. 6 points, and the last one will forever change the way you look at your dog. What do they really feel when you hug them? Think about it. For humans, hugging is a bonding behavior that releases oxytocin. But for dogs, hugging carries no evolutionary meaning whatsoever. On the contrary, it's a threat signal. Stanley Coren from Columbia University, in a study analyzing more than 250 dog photographs, reached a striking conclusion. In more than 80% of dogs photographed while being hugged by their owners, classic stress signals were observed: mouth closing, face turning, looking down, or ears pulled back. Why? Because dogs use the behavior of gripping something with their front limbs to catch prey or establish dominance. For them, arms closing around their body can mean a pressure that restricts their freedom. Cortisol levels rise, muscles tense. But to avoid upsetting you, they most often simply stay still and wait. So what should you do? Not stop hugging. Learn how to hug. When your dog chooses to lean into you on their own, that contact is safe for them. The difference lies in who is in control. You look into their eyes. You see love in that gaze. But what do they see in yours? Among the ancestors of dogs, direct and prolonged eye contact is a challenge. In pack hierarchy, the dominant individual is the one who doesn't look away. That's why a dog that stares for a long time into the face of someone they don't know instinctively begins to evaluate that person as a threat. However, there is a critical distinction here, and science has made this clear. Mutual eye contact established with a familiar and trusted owner triggers a completely different biological process. Research by Takafumi Kikusui from Nagasaki University found that oxytocin levels rose significantly in dogs that made eye contact with their owners. So this can be a moment that deepens the bond. Where is the difference? In context. Forced eye contact with someone unfamiliar or at a moment when the dog wants to escape creates stress. But when your dog is relaxed and you allow them to look at you on their own terms, that gaze is the purest expression of trust in the world. Understanding the difference changes everything. Now put yourself in your dog's position. A being 10 times your size suddenly leans its face toward you. No way to escape, no preparation. What does this scene mean for a dog? Dogs are extremely sensitive to the angle of approach. A fast approach from the front and above shares the same geometry as a predator's attack. This is why many dogs pull back, lick their lips, or slightly wrinkle their nose even at a human face leaning in with affection. These are micro-stress signals, and they're usually missed. The same applies to petting on top of the head. Alexandra Horowitz's research shows that the vast majority of dogs experience a temporary freeze response when a hand suddenly comes down over their heads. In contrast, petting on the chest, under the chin, or around the neck produces a much calmer physiological response. A small habit change. When approaching your dog, slow down, crouch, and extend your hand at a level they can see. For them, this is the greatest gesture of trust in the world. And right at this point, if this information is changing the way you see your dog, you can like the video and subscribe to the channel so this content can reach more dog owners. Every like means one more dog being better understood. Now we're getting to perhaps the least talked about but deepest cutting point. Today you let them on the couch. Tomorrow you said loudly, "No, get down." One day you pushed them away when guests were over. The next day you took them in your lap. This might seem like a small inconsistency to you, but for your dog, it means the world is unpredictable. And unpredictability is one of the greatest sources of stress for dogs. Classical conditioning theory taught us this. Dogs are constantly searching for the answer to the question, what comes after this behavior? When the answer is consistent, the brain relaxes. When the answer changes every time, cortisol levels remain chronically elevated. This means the dog lives in a constant state of alarm, trying to predict the next reaction. Love reveals itself most clearly here. Love sometimes means saying no, but the same no every time. Trust lives inside predictability. Have you ever raised your voice when your dog did something? No, stop, drop it! Did you ever wonder what was happening inside your dog at that moment? Dogs perceive the emotional content of the human voice far more sensitively than the meaning of words. When Oregon State University researchers measured the cortisol effect of tone of voice in dogs, they found that a loud and angry tone could increase blood cortisol by 40 to 60%. But here's the more interesting part. Dogs don't learn in this state. They freeze. High cortisol shuts down the learning center. So in that moment when you're yelling at your dog, you're not training them. You're frightening them. And a frightened brain starts working not to avoid making the same mistake next time, but solely to watch you and predict the next outburst. A calmer voice delivers a clearer message. This is a scientific fact. And here we are. The last point, perhaps the most frequently done, the best intentioned, but the deepest cutting behavior of all. You ran into someone in the park. "I love dogs so much, can I pet them?" And you smiled and guided your dog toward that person, or pulled them by the leash. What exactly was happening inside your dog at that moment? The secure base theory was first defined in human-child attachment. Then researchers discovered that the same mechanism works identically in the dog-owner relationship. For the dog, the owner is the safe harbor they return to while exploring the world. When facing something new, a new person, a new situation, the dog first looks at you. Is this safe? If at that moment you push your dog toward the stranger, they've been sent out to open sea before returning to the safe harbor. For them, this is not merely discomfort. It is a small crack forming in the frame of trust. The most powerful thing you can do is this. Let the stranger crouch down. Let them extend their hand, and wait for your dog to make their own decision. When they approach that stranger, this world will become a slightly safer place for them. And because they made that decision themselves, they will see you as a slightly stronger harbor. We've covered 6 points. Forced hugs, top-down gazes, inconsistent rules, raised voices, forced introductions. None of these are done with bad intentions. They all come from love. But love sometimes speaks the wrong language. And here is the most humane thing science tells us. Dogs mirror their owners. We call this behavioral mirroring. The dog of an owner experiencing chronic stress gradually becomes more anxious over time. The dog of a calm and consistent owner perceives the world as a less threatening place. When you look at your dog's behaviors, you are also looking at yourself. That's why what you learned today isn't only for your dog, it's for you as well. Your dog was trying to tell you something today. Maybe they turned their face away. Maybe they froze. Maybe they just waited in silence. But now you know this language. And remember, they are always talking. You just keep listening. See you in the next video.